Um, it's actually very important, as all of you know, to properly understand Buddhism, because Buddhism is the really heart of the philosophy. All of you that have studied Alice Bailey know that it's basically bereft of Buddhism. There's some elementary aspects of the Buddhist philosophy there, but not much. And you would be surprised because, everyone knows that DK is a Geluk Rinpoche, and anyone would have expected lots of Buddhism in his writings through Alice Bailey. Instead, there was almost nothing. Instead, it was focused on Christianity. And then, of course, the esoteric philosophy of Blavatsky was then elaborated to quite real detail, with the treatise on cosmic fire basically being the physiological key to the Secret Doctrine. I gave then recently the astrological and numerological keys. So these are the explanation of the standards of therein. And that is one side or one arm of our dispensation, the esoteric doctrine. And then the other arm of our dispensation is Buddhism, or esoteric Buddhism. And my brief was to actually merge the two, to exemplify or explain both. One, of course, is the esoteric doctrine, esoteric Christianity, the Kabbalah, the Secret Doctrine philosophy, which is the Western oriented way of thinking. And the Western orientated methodology of thinking is to look at a God. All of the gods in God, depending which way you want to look at it, the supreme God or God and the gods, for instance, Egyptian mythology, the ancient sort of Babylonian and the Greek and Roman, all of those myths, those are the gods. And then, of course, the Judeo-Christian sort of tradition and is all the same. It's looking at an external universe and the forces pertaining to that external universe. And then looking at those forces that pertain to an external universe as a methodology of gaining enlightenment, awakening. And this is the Western. And it's derived on the empirical mind, basically, or extension of the empirical mind that leads towards the Dharmakaya. And this is the Ida Nadi. And the other methodology is the Buddhist and the Eastern methodology, which of course is the yoga tradition of Hinduism, Buddhism, and that is going to the inner universe through the quietening of the mind and stilling of the senses and elimination of all sense perceptors and all the cognition associated with them. One goes deep inwardly and gains realization of, I'll use the term God and the gods that way. And with the exoteric or the other Western method, astrology becomes the main science and astrological tradition. And all of the ancients, when you look at all of those megalithic sites, Stonehenge, for instance, the Great Pyramids, all oriented astrologically. And so that's science. And you can see then it brings us to the esoteric science, esoteric astrology, and integrated with modern astronomy. And that produces the highest form of the Western methodology. It's a scientific methodology, and we can see our Western civilization also coming in line with that methodology. There's a whole psyche, a psychic constitution that one has, that when one is born into a Western body, it's different to Eastern orientation, because with the Western, it's the Idanadi aspect that dominates. And any of you that have been and lived in the Orient, in India or places like that, or to Tibet or to even China and Japan, you understand that the mode of thinking is different. It's not so empirically, China is different a little bit, but certainly India, the mode of thinking is completely different. It's an inward, psychically sensitive. The intellect is there, but it's not the main thing. It's more bhakti, it's more devotional attitude or reverence for life. We are born, all of us are born into the East or to the West in order to develop the different psychic constitutions within our consciousness. That's actually quite marked. I mean, of course, with modern day technology and the internet and all of that, it's starting to blur or muddy the waters between the two hemispheres, but it's still the same. And what I'm doing is bringing out both of these hemispheres. The inner methodology through emphasis on meditation and the Buddhism, and then the Ida or the Western orientation through explanation of astrology and the Blavatsky Bailey line of teaching. And the two are merged in the central channel of the threefold Nadi system, Sushumna. So that then becomes fused into a unity. And that synthesis is actually quite difficult to achieve. And this is what I'm trying to do throughout all of my writings. It would have been much easier for me just to have been a Tibetan Buddhist scholar and written books just mainly for Buddhism. It's much easier just to stick in one subject, but to be ambidextrous in all of the fields, that is much harder task. That's also, of course, the nature of the third ray. What I do is the fusion of the third and the second ray. The third ray, in many ways, is the Western methodology, and the second ray is in many ways the Eastern methodology. But there's always a type of yin-yang, the one flows into the other, a mutability. And many with an empirical mind, they try to always concretize or reify this or that. But with the esoteric philosophy, it's normally not so stark. We have a mutability, a flowingness, emergence of one into the other. It's sometimes quite difficult to properly explain in words when one is explaining the philosophy, this sort of yin-yang, the flowing nature of the esoteric Dharma. There are definitions and there are definitions within the definitions. And so it's the one is partly yin and more yang, and then another one is more yin and less yang. And then they move together like that.